They thought she was bluffing until the witness opened their mouth. Barron Trump's lawsuit against Representative Jasmine Crockett had dominated headlines for days, painting a picture of a bold legal move to protect his image. He accused her of defamation over statements made during a televised committee hearing, confident the court would swiftly side with him. But Jasmine Crockett, known for her fierce demeanor and sharp legal mind, came prepared. As the courtroom filled with press and tension, she calmly introduced her first and only witness. The room hushed. The man took the stand, placed his hand on the Bible, and in just 9 seconds dismantled Barron's entire case. "I was there." Barron said it exactly what she quoted him on, he stated with unwavering clarity. The silence that followed was louder than any outburst. Barron's legal team froze, visibly shaken. Their objections were half-hearted, their confidence cracked. The judge leaned forward, as if even he hadn't expected the case to turn so suddenly. Crockett sat still, her expression unreadable, knowing full well the storm had passed, and she was still standing. Outside, the media exploded. Clips of the testimony flooded every platform. Pundits called it a career-defining moment for Crockett and a devastating blow to the Trump family's public veneer. What began as an attempt to silence her ended with Barron's credibility in pieces. His legacy, already fragile, had been shattered not over weeks of debate or hours of testimony, but in the space of 9 seconds, asterisk. As the courtroom tried to regain its composure, the witness remained steady under cross-examination. Barron's lawyers, now visibly unnerved, attempted to challenge the man's credibility, but it was too late. He was a decorated former staffer, with a spotless record, and more importantly, he had documentation, emails, meeting logs. Even a brief audio clip that, while not legally admissible on its own, echoed the very words Crockett had quoted. The evidence wasn't just persuasive, it was suffocating. Every line Barron's team had drawn in their opening arguments now blurred into irrelevance. Asterisk, Jasmine Crockett didn't gloat, she didn't smile, she let the silence speak for her. This wasn't just a legal victory. It was a demonstration of restraint, strategy, and unmatched preparation. As the judge recessed for the day, murmurs filled the room. Some spectators couldn't believe what they'd seen. Others, especially those familiar with Crockett's reputation, weren't surprised at all. Outside the courthouse, journalists scrambled to rewrite their live coverage. What was supposed to be a headline about Barron Trump defending his honor had turned into a story of humiliation, exposed ego, and a powerful woman who refused to be bullied into silence. Asterisk, the following day, major news outlets dissected every frame of the courtroom footage. Pundits debated how Barron had walked into a trap of his own making. Legal experts praised Crockett's surgical takedown, pointing out that she hadn't just won the case, she'd reshaped the entire narrative surrounding it. This wasn't a defamation suit anymore. It was a referendum on entitlement, on power, on legacy. The Trump family had always been a symbol of showmanship and spectacle, but here, stripped of the usual media control, Barron looked young, outmatched, and dangerously underprepared. Asterisk, behind closed doors, insiders reported growing tensions within Trump's legal circle. Whispers emerged that Barron had ignored senior advisors who warned against targeting Crockett. She wasn't just another politician, she was a trained attorney, a fighter with nothing to lose and everything to prove. Filing this lawsuit wasn't a miscalculation, it was a trapdoor he willingly stepped on. Asterisk, and the ripple effects didn't stop at the courtroom. On Capitol Hill, lawmakers took notice. Crockett's stock rose almost instantly. She began receiving calls from senior Democrats applauding her poise. Even some moderate Republicans privately admitted she'd won the public's respect. Campaign donations surged. Her social media following exploded. The same footage that once painted her as too confrontational now framed her as fearless, precise, and utterly unshakable. Asterisk, meanwhile, Barron Trump retreated from public view. Statements from his camp became sparse. Rumors circulated about canceled appearances, suspended interviews, and internal family frustration. In just a few short days, what was intended to protect his image had done the opposite. Not only had it called his judgment into question, but it had also handed Jasmine Crockett the kind of national platform no strategist could ever script. Asterisk, and it all started with a lawsuit. And ended in 9 unforgettable seconds. Asterisk, let me know. If you want to turn this into a full YouTube narration script, documentary-style breakdown, or character-driven drama, asterisk. The court's official decision came swiftly. In a written statement issued just 3 days later, the judge dismissed Barron Trump's lawsuit in its entirety, calling the case not only unsubstantiated but strategically reckless. The ruling cited the witness testimony as clear and credible, and criticized the Trump legal team for what it described as an apparent attempt to weaponize the court system for personal reputation management. It was, in every sense, a legal embarrassment, one that would haunt Barron for months, if not years. Asterisk, Jasmine Crockett, for her part, issued a single statement outside the courthouse. No podium, no entourage, no dramatic flair. I said what I said because it was true, she told the cameras. And the truth doesn't back down just because someone with a famous last name gets uncomfortable. Then she walked away. Number. Hashtags, no victory dance. Just that cool, uncheckable calm. But the political world was now fully awake. By the end of the week, she'd been invited to 3 major primetime interviews. She turned 2 of them down, signaling she wasn't going. To turn this moment into a publicity tour? That restraint only deepened the public's respect. She wasn't chasing clout. She was defending her voice and, by extension, the voices of people who'd been silenced by power far too often. Asterisk, behind closed doors at Mar-a-Lago, reports described the fallout as tense. Donald Trump himself was said to be furious, not just at the loss but at the optics. The Trump brand had always projected invincibility, but Barron's defeat had pierced that illusion. The headlines no longer read like applause. They read like postmortems. The air falls flat, legacy lawsuit backfires. Crockett's clapback echoes nationwide. Asterisk, meanwhile, Crockett's approval. Ratings began to surge, especially among younger voters. She was no longer just a sharp-tongued Congresswoman from Texas. She was a symbol of resistance against political dynasties who thought they could litigate their way into rewriting the truth. Her social media feeds exploded with messages of support, not just from Democrats, but from independents and even disillusioned conservatives who admired her composure under fire. Asterisk. And the ripple effects extended far beyond the courtroom. Asterisk, at college campuses, law schools, and community centers across the country, people began quoting her. Professors dissected the trial in legal ethics courses. Activists printed her courtroom photos onto posters. The clip of the 9-second testimony, bare, powerful, indisputable, became one of the most replayed videos on the internet that month. Gen Z had their moment, and Jasmine Crockett was at the center of it. Asterisk, even those who didn't agree with her politics admitted one thing. She had won decisively, not by yelling the loudest, but by standing on facts while her opponent crumbled. Under the weight of ego. Asterisk, in the end, Barron Trump wasn't destroyed by Jasmine Crockett. He was destroyed by a courtroom he thought he could control, by a witness he didn't see coming, and by 9 seconds that proved the truth, no matter how briefly spoken, can leave a permanent echo. Asterisk, and for Jasmine Crockett, she didn't just survive the storm. Asterisk. In the weeks that followed, the aftermath of the trial refused to fade from public view. What began as a legal clash between 2 names, one rooted in a legacy of wealth and political power, the other forged through grit and raw determination, had evolved into something much bigger. It became a case study in American accountability. Barron Trump stayed mostly silent. Public appearances were canceled. His social media went dark. Rumors of tension within the Trump family intensified. Behind the scenes, aides scrambled to shift public focus, but every new move only reminded people of what had just happened. No amount of PR spin could erase the now viral clip of his opponent's witness delivering a 9-second truth bomb that sent shockwaves through every media cycle. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett didn't rush to capitalize on the attention, but the world came to her anyway. Editorials praised her discipline, with The Atlantic calling her a rare figure in politics, fearless but focused. Time magazine featured her in a digital cover story titled, "The Truth Still Speaks." Requests to speak at conferences, universities, and international forums came pouring in. She declined most of them. She wasn't interested in being a moment, she was planning to be a movement. On Capitol Hill, the tone changed. Representatives who once saw her as a rising irritant now regarded her as a rising star. Committees that once gave her 5-minute speaking slots began giving her the floor. Her name was floated in leadership circles, quietly at first, then more openly. Staffers in other offices began calling her the closer, a nod to how calmly and decisively she dismantled the Trump team in court, and yet, through it all, Crockett stayed grounded. In interviews, she redirected credit to her legal team, to her community, to the voters who sent her to Washington to fight for the truth. She reminded everyone this wasn't about revenge. It was about principle. "If someone sues you for telling the truth," she said during a university Q&A, you don't panic, you prove it louder, you fight smarter, and you let the truth do what it does best, stand the witness who gave the pivotal testimony. He became something of a folk hero in his own right. He declined book deals and interviews, insisting he was just doing his duty. But his words, those exact 9 seconds, were now quoted on shirts, memes, even tattoos. The phrase, "I was there, Barron said it," became a quiet anthem for those tired of spin and spectacle, and hungry for unfiltered honesty. The court's full ruling was later published in legal journals and studied by law schools as an example of what happens when a case is built on bravado instead of evidence. It wasn't just a courtroom defeat, it was a narrative implosion. One that exposed how fragile a carefully crafted image can be when challenged by facts, discipline, and a single credible voice. In private circles, even Trump allies admitted the case should never have gone to court. Some called it the most self-inflicted PR disaster of the year. Others saw it as a sign of generational overreach, proof that inherited power doesn't guarantee public persuasion. And for those within the Trump orbit who had their own political ambitions, Barron's defeat was a cautionary tale. The name may still carry weight in some rooms, but it's no longer immune to gravity. As the months rolled on, Jasmine Crockett's voice continued to grow. Not louder, just more trusted, more respected. She introduced new legislation centered on judicial reform and speech protection. Her floor speeches drew attention. Her interviews cut through partisan noise. And more than once, when faced with critics who tried to silence her, she would calmly remind them, sometimes with just a glance, that she had already stood her ground in the highest pressure arena, and she had won. But echoes don't just linger, they evolve. Months after the trial, the cultural and political ripple effects had only grown. In grassroots circles, Jasmine Crockett's courtroom triumph became a symbol of standing up to inherited power. At town halls across the country, young organizers invoked her name when pushing back against long-standing injustices. Memes of the 9-second shatter became shorthand for exposing hypocrisy with precision. For many, it wasn't just a legal win, it was a turning point. Journalists began referring to the trial as a modern-day David versus Goliath, though this time David wasn't armed with stones, but facts, a sharp mind, and composure under fire. Late-night hosts joked about it, but the audience laughter carried an edge of admiration. Even those who once viewed Crockett as too combative had come around. She wasn't just holding her own, she was setting a new standard for what it meant to fight clean, fight smart, and still win. Meanwhile, behind the walls of privilege and influence, Barron Trump's team attempted quiet damage control. Several advisors resigned. Donors, once interested in propping him up as the next chapter in the Trump dynasty, began to distance themselves. There were murmurs of a political rebrand, a possible relocation, and a shift to private life. But the internet doesn't forget. Every time his name surfaced, the trial came with it like a shadow cast by a mistake he thought would silence someone else. And it wasn't just his reputation that suffered. The case set legal precedent. Judges across the country began referencing it when dismissing similar speech-based lawsuits brought by public figures. First Amendment advocates celebrated the ruling as a reaffirmation of free expression in political discourse. In legal symposiums, scholars debated the implications of powerful families trying and failing to weaponize the courts to suppress criticism, for Jasmine Crockett. The moment served as a launchpad. Not because she wanted it to be, but because the public made it so. She received invites to policy forums in Europe, speaking engagements at Ivy League universities, and private meetings with national party leaders. There was even early speculation about her running for Senate or higher, but she didn't let the speculation change her tone. I'm not here for titles, she said in an interview 6 months later. I'm here to remind people that if you stand on truth, no lawsuit can move you. If your voice shakes the ground, let it shake. Just make sure it's real. The witness, whose testimony flipped the narrative in 9 seconds, remained a quiet figure turning down book deals, staying out of the spotlight, and continuing to serve quietly in his field. When asked in one rare interview if he regretted speaking out, he simply said, "Silence is comfort for the wrong people. I said what needed to be said." And so the story didn't end in the courtroom, it expanded. It became a case taught in law classes, a moment revisited in political documentaries, and a permanent reminder that no name, no matter how golden or historic, is above truth. Years from now, people won't remember every headline or every social media trend, but they'll remember this: a man tried to sue his way into rewriting reality. He walked into a courtroom expecting silence. Instead, he got a storm. In the end, it wasn't the fame, the lawyers, or the legacy that decided the outcome. It was the truth. Barron Trump, confident and shielded by a powerful name, thought he could crush Jasmine Crockett in court. What he didn't expect was a witness so precise, so devastatingly clear, that in just 9 seconds his entire narrative collapsed. The lawsuit meant to silence Crockett only amplified her. It turned a bold Congresswoman into a national symbol of fearless truth-telling. While Barron retreated into silence and scandal, Crockett stood taller not because she gloated, but because she let the facts speak for themselves. The court ruling echoed across legal institutions, newsrooms, and campuses, redefining the balance between power and accountability. This wasn't just a courtroom when it was a cultural reset. Crockett didn't just defend her words. She rewrote the script of who gets to speak freely in American democracy. And long after the news cycle moved on, people still remembered what happened that day. Because in a world filled with noise, it wasn't the shouting that left a mark. It was 9 seconds of truth, delivered with clarity, and a woman who refused to back down. That's how legacies are broken, and how new ones begin.